Hi, Tammy.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Episode 7 is here. And as we promised, we will talk about safety and tracks condition because already, unfortunately, a lot of things happened. And honestly, we wanted to talk about this topic already after Portimao. I think you all know why. But then a lot of other things happened. So I think we can say that we've been forced to postpone this, but fortunately or unfortunately, this issue or this topic is relevant every time. So, because we wanted to talk about already after Portimao, I would say start with Portimao and the gravel issue, which is there since basically MotoGP arrived there. And riders saying basically from the first moment that the gravel is just not okay, the stones are too big. Tammy will explain a bit more in a couple of seconds. And then, though the riders have the safety commission, though we have the safety officer, used to be Franco Uncini, now it's Tome Alfonso Espeleta. And we know that for Dorna, safety is really, really important. It's a difficult issue. Money every time comes to the picture, yes. And as I mentioned, riders have the safety commission, so they have a place to complain and to say their wishes. Sometimes they get promises, but sometimes, unfortunately, nothing happens. So let's talk about Portimao first.
First of all, let's talk about the Safety Commission, just to mention that because the riders, you just mentioned it, the riders, they have their place to talk. They are trying to move it now from Fridays to Thursdays, so maybe there will be some kind of change. Also, in the Safety Commission, they always talk about not only the current track they are on, they're also talking about the future track that they're going to be. So maybe there is still a way to change something, because riders complain. That's their job. That's part of their job. They will complain about everything whenever they can, because they need everything to be as perfect as it can be. But when we get to Portimao, there's a reason they complain. Gravel, pebbles, it's in the rule book. Same as paint, there's also gravel. There needs to be a certain rule about the gravel, because the gravel needs to be safe enough for them. The purpose of the gravel is to observe the riders, to allow them to sink in more or less into the gravel, to end their fall, their crash, not too hard, not too harsh, but not to allow the circulation and what we call the washing machine all the way to the walls. It needs to stop somewhere. Now, if the gravel is not able to absorb them from any kind of reason, there is an issue. We also saw other issues in the past, like the artificial grass that was taken away, all sorts of things. It's also, let's be honest and clear about this, as much as everybody wants to make it as good and safe as they can, this is a learning process, and usually you don't know what will happen until you get there. But in this case, specifically, there were a lot of warnings and a lot of complaints. We all remember Pecco getting up, taking the stones and taking them with him into the box to show his crew and his team, and they looked at it laughing, but not laughing at him, but laughing in shock when they saw the stones. And Nikki, can you model for us, please?
Yes, I'm not like Pecco, so I have only one piece of this. And when I show the other one next to, and actually what I'm holding is 3 small stones. So I think the difference is really obvious. So the size and also the edges, what they used. So that's the gravel we had in the last years at around the Portimao racetrack. And this year they did something something we could see already during the test, but during the test we had a big crash. Fabio Di Gianantonio and also
there are a few issues with the gravel even before they started.
Yes,
the first issue.
Sorry. So what I wanted to say that basically they started to replace, but just a really small place with this one.
That's the thing. They did not replace them. They put on top. That's the problem. That's part of the problem because that was a partial solution, and which means that next season, they have to go to take it from the core. The thing is, it's two things. It's from one side, it's the size of the pebbles, the size of the stone. From the other side, it's the same stone for a few too many years. Now they have to fluff it up. When they say fluff it up, is put some air in it so the stones can absorb the
energy,
the rider, the bike, everything. But now, because it's so compressed, because of everything that was going on, this is just natural. It happens from water, from rain, from everything that happens. So that's one issue, that they had to fluff it. Then they had to replace it with the smaller ones. The problem is that they didn't have the time. Now, they were planning this for quite a while to say, to be, well, they're really not the devil. To be the advocate here is just to say that there were heavy rains during this winter. They weren't allowed to change the stones because of all these heavy rains, because, you know, Portimao, we also had ups and downs, and there are places that water can sit and lay, and it was an issue. They were planned to replace all the stones. They didn't have all the time, so they did go and do the replacements. But before we do that, we let's just mention that, as you said, and we'll add the pictures, because I went to Shui to see the helmet of Di Gianantonio, because that was the big crash that you talked about during the tests. And Digia did not stay quiet. He was really, really upset because it was a scary, scary crash. And usually, just to explain, we see the helmets, they are sent usually to be x-rayed after a big crash, to see, not to learn from the crash. Because Shui or AGV or everybody wants to arrive, they want to understand what happens to the helmet after a big crash, so they can improve the helmets. That's the idea. So they didn't even need to send it for x-ray, because you could see the crack. It was so badly damaged, and it was so scary, and really, that again shows how important their safety gear is. But then Portimao track went and did the changes. The problem was that you could see it with bare eyes, the patches, and it wasn't all the way covered, and it wasn't it depends how you crashed in a certain corner, if you ended up on the new gravel or ended up on the old gravel. And we also heard, because we saw there quite a few big crashes, and Bastianini, Oliveira, Marquez. We spoke about the Oliveira Marquez crash. That wasn't affected by the pebbles, but as we heard from Alex Spagaro, he thinks something very specific about Paul's crash.
Yeah. So what I wanted to mention here, that so the riders have the possibility to say their wishes, let's say, or complain. And a lot of times they get promises that yes, this will happen for the next year. My problem here, that I have a feeling, and clearly there are reasons behind, don't get me wrong, yet until something serious happens, a lot of times we see no changes, or the changes just don't come fast enough. Because why we had to wait 3 years, and why we had to wait to this crash of Polespargaro and the injuries, and he was so lucky, because it could have been much worse. So why we always have to wait that something big happens, and then really FIM and Dorna really push the button and say to the track, as Carmelo Espeleta did after this year's Portimao weekends, and he gave an interview to Speed Week, to Günther Wiesinger, and in that interview, Carmelo Espeleta clearly said that he informed the Portimao racetrack that unless the gravel issue is resolved for next year, in 2024, we won't have a race at the Portimao racetrack at the Algarve circuit.
Yeah, it's a problematic issue. I agree with you. It's a problematic issue, and because we do see how, for example, the extent of, even though it's only pebbles, it's huge expense. It's a huge thing to invest in, and it is an issue until, because it's, as much as it's a sport, it's also a business. So there needs to be some kind of a way to sort it out and to understand when it is something that really needs to change, when it's something that can be solved in another way, when it's not such a big issue, or when it's something that is being maybe exaggerated. I'm not saying that the riders are exaggerating, but sometimes in their position, it's hard to see, for other people to see their position. It's also sometimes hard to predict, because also sometimes the riders themselves are surprised how close the walls become from a season to a season.
Yeah, exactly. And then what you asked and what Aleix mentioned about Paul's crash, that these injuries could have been avoided if the track condition was different. I mean, the gravel.
It has to do with the size of the pebble and with the observing the fluffiness of the stones, because he just kept on rolling. And he was supposed to stop somewhere.
Yes, I will put a picture here that in the gravel, almost in every corner, you could see grass, literally grass, but tall ones. So it's not from the rain we had 2 weeks before, it maybe years that no one touched that. So that's really, it was also in the rubber balls. That's a condition that normally.
I made a face because I didn't see it. So
okay.
So Nikki explains. Okay, so now we know the foot down. It's not the first time that Dorna actually put their foot down about some tracks. We'll mention that in a moment, but yeah. So let's just hope that next year Portimao will be fixed. And we also hear a bit of the same about CoTA.
Yes, I think for Portimao now it will be a little bit more difficult, because we have the rotation between the races on the Iberia island. So the Spanish races and the Portuguese race. Like this year, in theory, and then let's see India and Kazakhstan, but in theory this year, we won't have Aragon. And every year they will leave out one of these tracks. So that's why there's a huge chance that Portimao cannot have a GP next season, but let's wait and see how the works go in advance. And one more thing before we move to other tracks is that we can mention here air fence, because one issue was the gravel, clearly, at the Portiamo racetrack, but the other one that basically they've been only 2 turns where we had air fences at that racetrack, which was really surprising for me. And they, after Paul's crash Saturday morning, they put an air fence also at turn 11. So that was the 3rd point. And regarding this, Jorge Martin said, and we all know, and that's another issue, that the bike is getting faster and faster. A lot of riders keep complaining about this. Mark Marquez did as well, but I will mention a bit later. Massimo Rivola gave an interview beginning of the season or before the season, saying that tracks becoming smaller and smaller because the bikes are faster and faster. So what Jorge Martin said that, okay, then if it's this way and we need to put air fences everywhere, then put air fences everywhere.
Yeah, but again, the riders, most of them said that they didn't even notice that there's no air fence there. They never got there. They never got all the way to the wall. We are getting more and more tracks that we get closer to the wall. It has to do with the engines. It has to do with the aerodynamics. It has to do with the riders getting better. It has to do with the tires. It has to do with so many things. It also has to do with their safety gear that is getting more better and better, so they feel safer to push. And if I may say, we at least here in Israel, we have in the rule book of driving, we have that your speed limit is based on the speed limit in the area and also the road condition. So you have to adjust yourself. So if it's heavily raining, you cannot go 110 even though it's allowed. So we have riders who know the issue, that the track is not able to take them going that fast, yet they are going that fast. I cannot blame them. Listen, I cannot blame them. That's why they need all the other things, the other measurements to make sure that they're slower. But it's there.
Yeah, but they are racers, and their job is to go as fast as possible. And I cannot imagine saying to any rider that, hey, ride slowly, be careful because it's slippery outside. I mean,
because when we see them actually going slower or raise their hand, we actually we hear so many criticism about the riders for not wanting to take the risk, as if, you know. But it's just my thoughts sometimes.
Okay. So yeah, then clearly we have different type of difficulties, not necessarily issues or not every time issues with racetracks. For example, right after Portimao, we already started to think, now Termas is coming. Every time is really dirty, really slippery. Riders complain a lot. Some bumps, not as CoTA, but some bumps. But I can say that this year it was quite okay. We couldn't hear a lot of critics. And I think the track did a really nice job cleaning the track, though it was almost 1 year that nothing happened there.
Well, first of all, they came there after 1 year that the year before they had one less day. So maybe, you know, they remembered it worse than it was actually supposed to be. And they did clean it. They worked really hard in Argentina to clean the track and to have it as ready as they can. And the riders, well, you know, we hear that sentence, it's the same for everyone. They kept saying it many times during the weekend. But it was relatively okay. It wasn't that bad.
Exactly. And then we arrived to CoTA. And the famous bumps.
Yeah, it was funny to listen to the riders, because every time another rider spoke, there was another corner that they said that there are bumps in. We have to remember that they have different lines, so some of them feel a bump here more than they feel a bump there. And but we clearly saw that it had a huge effect. There's a reason why this track has so many issues. First of all, it has like this chalky soil underneath the track, and it has a lot of effect from water. If you see chalky soil, every time it touches water, it grains, it loses its strength, and that's all around that area. So the bumps are coming easier. Compared to Argentina, this is a track that works really, really hard all around the year with many car races. So every breaking point is a breaking point. And also, like America, this is something I heard from a track designer. like America, they like to build it big. If we look from the top at this track, and the images are beautiful, we see the stripes, we see the stars, but there's so much asphalt there compared to any other track, and having so much surface of asphalt does also have an effect. And that's also part of the reason. So now we're ended up in having 4 different type of asphalt around the track, and when it's wet, it's problematic. And there are many more problems that riders mentioned.
Exactly what they do, I think every year, basically they shave the asphalt. I think that's the best way to say it. But yet, as you said, the land is constantly moving. So the bumps will be just coming and coming and coming. So there is no real solution here, first of all.
Yeah, but when they shave, let's just explain that they have the bitumen, which is connecting the stones. That's the glue that connects the stones. And when they shave it, what happens is that sometimes the stones just pop out. And then it means that they have less grip. And then it means that they have more problems. And we saw all of the sudden corners 11, which is difficult braking. And well, you have to start the straight from there. And then we see the hard braking in corner 12, and they had problems there and there. And that's why we saw some of the crashes that we saw.
Exactly. So this is a huge shame, because apart from this, I think all the riders love this track. Maybe also Aleix Espargaro, who had no good results till this sprint at least. So it was his kryptonite and weak kryptonite, exactly, and weak point. But though I think all the riders love, because the layout is really special. We talked about the vibe in the previous episode. So it's a huge shame. But what I wanted to mention here, and you said that this is also one of the riders' jobs to complain. But imagine you just keep hearing that, oh, the bumps is too dangerous. We cannot ride here. No, 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 no. Then we see lap records year by year. Also this year, so it can be difficult. Also, if you are from Dorna, from FIM, you keep hearing the same thing. It's impossible to ride here. Then we have lap records.
Stefan Brado even went all the way and said that he feels that the conditions are testing the human limits. That's how far he went in describing the situation. And it feels a little bit like the Stoner syndrome that we saw in the past, when Stoner kept complaining, but then he brought the results. So it's a problem. And again, it's a huge task. It's a huge investment. And but we do know that probably also the foot came down also in this situation, because we see it more often that Dorna and the FIM are saying to the track, listen, you have to sort it out.
Exactly. I think most of the time it's a huge investment. We could see losing Bruno, for instance, because of the asphalt condition after 2020. The rider said that, listen, if they don't re-asphalt, resurface, we just really cannot race here. And we lost that racetrack. And I think that it was 2020, 2021, and it could have cost 4 million euros 2-3 years ago to resurfacing. So yes, that's a lot of money, but I think, and I hope that everyone shares this, safety first. But we have success stories step by step. And next round this week already is Jerez and the Spanish GP. And Marc Marquez had a crash in 2021, just after coming back, the huge injury at turn 7. And he hit the wall, and there was an air fence there at really, really high speed. The bike was completely broken in 2 pieces, basically. And after this, Marc started to say more and more that these bikes are getting too fast. We don't need this. We don't need the aerodynamics. We don't need the right height devices, because if we continue this way, all the tracks will be just too small. Moreover, the historical tracks like Jerez. And we have a good news here that basically the Jerez circuit and together basically with the local government or the city council of Jerez de la Frontera, they agreed that they will extend the escape zones at 5 turns during 3 years. So first, what they did already last year was this turn 7, this specific turn 7 that I just mentioned with Mark. For this year, so for this race, we will see already the extended safety area at turn 1 and 5. And the last step for next year will be turn 6 and 10, because that was the condition to keep the race at the Jerez track.
Yeah, and you mentioned before the amount. They had to get 4.4 million euros just to do this. And they did finish it, and it is ready for the arrival of MotoGP. And that's part of the thing, that the racetracks, they have to know that they have to upgrade the tracks and to have them ready, same as we are seeing now. Qatar working on their they are doing renovation all over. Also a little bit of that. We also saw in the last few years what Assen did. And when we see a creative solution with bringing up the grandstand, so there's extra runoff area under the grandstands, which is a new method, because it's impossible to find extra space when you have grandstands, and that's also part of the issue. And we will see more of that. You have there, you probably have, you can mention a few more tracks that we have issues with.
Yeah, basically this issue with the grandstand was something that we heard during a lot of years at the Catalonia racetrack, unfortunately. And yes, sometimes it's really difficult, almost impossible, because also at Jerez, they had to move also a little hill at turn 1 to be able to do this modification. But the result will be that the grandstand will be at a higher point also at the Jerez. So from turn 1, the people can see the whole main straight, turn 2, 3, 4. So they try to use it and take some advantages out of it. So yes, as you said, it's really important. I cannot recall now. Maybe you can help me out with the other racetracks.
We have Red Bull Ring that we're supposed to see more upgrades. We have Saxon Ring, which is a little bit of a problem. We are going to see more tracks that need to be a little bit improved in their safety. We had another track that they had to do their thing, which was Silverstone. Because the riders said that they are not coming back. When riders said we are not coming back, they won't come back. They really have to change it, because this is a really bad PR also for the track, because we know that these tracks are working. They need to work. They need to bring people to ride there. They need to make sure they are safe. We cannot have the list extended of injuries or riders that they cannot ride. We saw it in the past. Unfortunately, we saw sometimes that requests by riders were not listened to, and then we saw some tragic things happening. It happened more early times, 70s, but it's something that cannot be repeated.
Yeah, this is, I think, the last step that riders can do, saying that, okay, if they don't do, we just don't come back racing. But this is much more complicated thing, because the riders has contracts and so on and so on. I don't want to go in details. Also with Red Bull Ring, after the 2020 huge accident, they did what they could for the week after. And the rider said if they don't do a proper solution, we won't come back, but they went back, they had no choice. And that solution and that modification between turn 1 and 3, let's say with the new chicane, arrived just last year. But again, improvements were seen also there. So what we wanted to say in this episode, that safety first, safety is really important, but safety is not always an easy job to provide.
No, it's really not easy. We know that Tom Alfonso in his position now has a very difficult job. Luis Capirossi has a difficult job. The riders have a difficult job, and then, of course, the FIM, Dorna, and the tracks, because the tracks, it's a business, and they need to see how they make it safe and how enjoyable they still make it, but how they can actually afford it to do everything that riders ask for. And we also need to remember that one of the nicest things about the small tracks, the classical tracks, is that the riders are surrounded by fans. And if we are going to make the tracks as safe as possible, the top of the notch means that the fans are half a kilometer away from the riders. They listen, they hear them less, they feel them less, and that also has an effect on how everything feels.
Exactly. I think we don't have anything else to add here right now. Then let's see during the season, maybe we can do a follow-up episode on this and on the racetracks. So far, thanks for your attention, and we come back after the Jerez race. Goodbye.